Improving at cubing is hard, but if I were to start again, here are 7 things that I would do to optimize the process and prioritize success. This is going to differ from most advice, as no one wants to hear that the only possible solution is 2 hours of deliberate practice per day, because this just isn't sustainable. Instead, my ideas will make the learning process fun, whilst also striving for effectivity and rapid progress. The first piece of advice that I would give is that you should set goals. This is something that can really help you improve, as it sets a milestone which naturally you will really want to hit as fast as possible. Try to be ambitious with this, because challenging yourself can be really fun, but make sure that it isn't so far that you will lose motivation, as this is the exact opposite of what this method is trying to achieve. Setting goals is great, as it prevents you from ever being stationary during your journey. What I mean here is that if your goal is sub 20, then you will really want to hit it. Then your goal will be sub 15 and so on. With this, you will never be stuck with your progress, as this can lead to a flat line in your times. So if we use the previous example, once you've reached sub 20, then you should enjoy the success that you have just achieved, and this is really important. Make sure that you take the time to celebrate what you have accomplished, no matter how small it is, because this just makes sure that you maintain an excitement and enjoyment towards cubing, which will make it much easier to want to practice, therefore allowing you to improve significantly faster. So essentially, this point is that you should be trying to have as much fun with your journey as possible, and there are some other ways you can do this on top of setting goals. An example, especially for me, is making YouTube videos about cubing. This really helped me continue to enjoy improving, as I could easily see myself becoming bored and tired within a very short space of time if I didn't do this. What's great about YouTube is that people hold you accountable when you make mistakes. This means that when I'm doing something wrong, I am able to get instant feedback from the viewers of this channel, most of which are definitely better than me. Things like this just make sure that you don't lose the enjoyment that you had for this hobby, and it ensures that you will keep going and striving for the success that everyone wants. My second piece of advice that is really important is that you should master a skill before moving on. This is something that I wish I had known, and I even got it wrong not that long ago. I found that whilst learning new algorithms, as soon as I somewhat had it in my brain, I moved on to the next case. This doesn't work too well, as it means you will instantly forget the algorithm you supposedly just learned. What happens then is that you will get this case during a solve and then not be able to remember it. And I know from experience that this can be a really demotivating part of the learning process, as no one wants to fail. If you make sure to master the skill before you move on, it ensures that there is no chance of forgetting what you are supposed to be doing, which will reduce failure. Next is one that many people get wrong, and that is to make sure that you prioritize regular practice over long periods of practice. The phrase little and often really makes sense here, as it is so much more effective to do 10 to 15 minutes of practice every day compared to a whole block of 2 hours of practice once a week. This is because consistency is highly important due to muscle memory being a vital part of cubing. If you're having to recall something from memory day after day, it will be much easier to remember compared to doing it a load of times and then having a whole week before doing it again. So practicing cubing little and often is one of the best ways to get it into your long-term memory. Another reason why this is better is because long forms of practice can be draining, and is once again a further way to demotivate yourself. So I would always make sure not to do too much. This links into a little subcategory, which is that you shouldn't over practice. This can be hugely detrimental, as it leads to strain on your hands, which will obviously stop you being able to practice. Also, after over practicing, you probably won't want to continue for the next couple of days, as you will be bored of cubing by that point. This next one is a big one that a lot of people don't do, but that is to make sure that you have a really well set up cube. This can take your solves from being lackluster to being very good. One of the main reasons for this is that you will be so much more confident on a cube that suits your turning style. For me, this is a cube that is fast, yet not too uncontrollable, but it must have good corner cutting and somewhat decent flexibility, and that is why I main the GAN 13. If you have a cube which isn't set up well, you will be left with lockups and over rotations, which can lead to a massive lack of trust in your cube, which will inevitably cause you to turn slower, so that you are sure that there will be no mistakes in the turning. This is obviously not ideal, and so a good setup is very important. But how should you set up a cube? Well, let me do a quick rundown. Most cubes nowadays have a dual adjustment tensioning system. The first part of this is the axis distance. This is usually the inner piece. If you make this tighter, it will reduce how much each piece will move, and this will mainly change the corner cutting. Next is spring compression. This is how easily a piece moves in the space it is allowed. This mainly affects the flexibility, and it is usually the piece on the outside of the tensioning system. After that, some cubes have magnet adjustments. This will either be on the corner or the edge. Stronger magnets means a larger click into place during turns, and weaker magnets mean a more subtle glide when turning. Finally, we have lube. This is the fine tuning of a cube, but it can actually have a large impact. A fast lube will make the turning much more effortless, whilst a slow lube will increase the force needed to make a turn. I recommend Lubos Rapid and Pires as some great lubes, which you can buy from speedcubing.org. Speaking of which, you can get the best speed cubes and plenty of accessories from speedcubing.org, and they kindly sponsor this channel, so make sure to check them out via the link in the description. And one of the best parts about this store is the super affordable delivery options. Tip number 5 is that you should learn from the best, whether that be through watching YouTube reconstructions, walkthrough solves, or another method. This can really help, as it will show you what the best people are doing, and there is so much that you can learn from this. I would by no means call myself a professional, but you are already on the path to doing this step by watching this video. It is clear that you are willing to learn and you want to improve, so take that willingness and put it into some videos about what you should be doing on the cube to learn. I would recommend doing that after watching this video though, so don't click off quite yet. There are also plenty of reconstructions from the people who set the times, such as Timon, and these are really good, as you can hear and see exactly what he did and what he was thinking during the solve. So watching him walk through a solve has massively helped me in the past. The next tip is one that I wish I had followed. This is to make sure that you learn the best algorithms from the beginning. I didn't do this with many of my algorithms, including the U-perms and the V-perm, as these algs are the worst for me, and they are certainly not the most efficient. If I had taken the time to learn good algs from the start, it would be much better for my times now when I am trying to optimize the solves. What really annoys me is that I don't have great finger tricks and efficient algorithms, and therefore I am much slower than if I had just taken slightly longer finding the best algorithms to begin with. This is also very important, because when you get to the stage that I am at now, it is much harder to unlearn something and relearn it slightly differently than if you had just learnt it better to begin with, even if this might have taken slightly longer. This is something that I have come victim to recently, as I have started to try and change some of my cases. However, when I see them, my brain instantly remembers the old case, at which point I can't get that out of my mind, no matter how hard I try. This means that I am not able to get the practice from using the algorithm in a solve, because I simply can't remember it. I wish now that I had learnt the best cases from the beginning. And finally, I have a couple of things that you must remember if you want to improve at cubing. The first is the idea that improvement is slow and doesn't come fast. Now this does seem slightly counterintuitive, considering just 1 week ago I released a video titled How to Rapidly Improve at Cubing. But sadly, the points in that video were only going to slightly reduce the time it takes to improve, because it still does take a really long time. Obviously, like I have mentioned before, this can be super demotivating as results don't come fast. But as long as you are aware of this, then you can reduce your expectations, and then you know what you are getting yourself into. At that point, it will all go well. The next point is that this will all take a lot of effort, and it isn't easy. Consistent practice schedules can be hard to stick to. However, if you follow them, then just remember the result is so worth it. This links to my next point, which is that you should still try to enjoy the journey. So to wrap up, be patient and persistent.